until you heard it. I didn't know our names were going to go on the blackboard.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Big Daddy.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out for this, and you're probably happy to learn for this last session. And so what my intent is today is to kind of wrap it up. What we started as part of this process was, again, to relaunch the church, to change its course. When you look at this, the question that I've been asking is, what do you see? What do you see? What has this experience meant to you? How many of you, so I'm trying to do a little bit of freewheeling and kind of explain to you a little bit why we did this series, why we had other speakers come in, and ask you some questions. Right? What did you get out of it? Did you get anything out of it? Right? What was the intent? And so we had a number of people coming in to talk about our history. And the question wasn't, we invited the entire congregation, anybody that was interested, to kind of come back and learn, grow together. We went with some fundamentals. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in worship today, because this is fundamental to your future. This is you, right? When you look at this, you may look at a building, you may look at brick and mortar, but that's not what's really here. It is a community that is called to a special purpose. Right? And so through all of this, through these series, it was interesting, the responses, kind of the responses that we get. Like, the biggest response that we got is, when is this going to be over? Right? When are we going back to normal? And that's an interesting question, don't you think? What is normal? Do you want to go back to normal? Should you go back to normal? Is normal a healthy place for you to be? Okay. And the reason is how many of you, I was thinking about this earlier today, I always think in terms of metaphors, to try to explain things in metaphors. How many of you have ever seen, it's a cute little movie, it's called Wall-E? Wall-E? You remember the little robot, right? That it's just a cute little movie. And I often wondered, did you ever, you're probably like wondering, what has that got to do with where we are? Right? Think about what Wall-E is doing, right? I mean, did you ever really sit back and look at the spiritual implications of the movie Wall-E? Right? Wall-E is this little robot, right, that is essentially on planet Earth. And all of the humans, it seems, what we learn later, all of the humans have so destroyed paradise that they got kicked out, more or less. They left on a spaceship. And they left on a spaceship, and Wall-E is left to kind of clean up the mess. And he's just doing his thing. Just doing his thing. When he gets a visitor, Eve. And Eve is looking for anything good. Is there anything good on this planet that is worth reporting back? And Wall-E, this little garbage collecting robot, has a planet. He has the beginnings of a different kind of life. Not robotic, not garbage, a different kind of life. And so in all of the travails, Eve goes back, and there's this whole, right, we always got to include a little bit of romance and everything. He goes back to the spaceship, and in the spaceship, guess what? The humans have forgotten why they exist, right? They've forgotten paradise. They've forgotten life, that kind of life. They live in a life of technology, a life of ease, and a life of comfort. And in the process, they've lost their ability to function as what we would consider, they forgot the ability to create because everything is given to them. Until they find this conflict enters in, which is Wally and Eve. Wally doesn't belong there. He's trying to track down Eve, and there's this conflict about whether they are ready to go back to earth, right? There's life. There's a different kind of life than we know. So there's that sense, I tell you that only to kind of suggest that what we do as a church is in many respects the same. You are Wally. You are the garbage collectors, right? But you are also, you're the ones that are holding up this life. And you're saying, you've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten why we exist. To the world that is out there that is shopping today, and by the way, yesterday, just to give you a little history of what I do soccer, and yesterday I had a soccer tournament in Charleston, and the fields were packed, right? And of course, when I go, I would say, well, I can't go on Sunday, right? I mean, I'll be happy to help you any other time, but I can't be there Sunday. And I'm looking and going, look at all of the families that have said this is much more of a priority than the life that you have to give. So that's your mission. The problem is, and this is happening not just here, this is happening across the board. We've become so comfortable, we've forgotten our mission. We've forgotten why we do what we do. So we decided we're going to go back to basics. We need to go back to understand why you do what you do. Why are you here? Right? Why are you here? All right. So let's kind of go back a little bit. And so we started with this idea of relaunch. Now, I think what happens is a lot of people kind of look at that and kind of go, okay, it's a cute buzzword, right? It's a program. It is what it is. That's right. And no offense, it's kind of like when Steve gets through with this, we'll move on. And to some extent, what I often get, and I've gotten this at other churches, we'll outweight you. We're going to outweight you. Right? You'll move on. Somebody else will come in, and we'll do what we do. I think this time is different. I don't know if you feel it or not. I can't tell. I wish I had a thermometer, and I don't mean the oral kind. To find the temperature. And the reason is, and I'm kind of giving you a little bit more of the backstory than perhaps I should, but I want to capture this for you. A couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you recognize this, if it shakes you at all. I don't even know if you attended. A couple of weeks ago, we had an outside speaker came in. His name was Dirk Elliott. Do you remember Dirk? Mm-hmm. Now, whatever you may think of the consulting, he came in, and there were about 35 people here that stayed after the meeting. And he talked a little bit about the life cycle. Where do you see the life cycle of the church? Where, all churches, new churches, right? New churches will launch, they'll grow, they'll be vibrant, they'll begin to develop a pattern, a rhythm over years. This happens over years. And then they kind of get into a maintenance phase that just keep the machine running, just keep it going. But as maintenance gives way to preferences, I like this kind of music. I don't like that kind. I prefer this time. I prefer that time. Whatever that is, as preference gives way to initiative, to mission, eventually you tend to slide into life support, right? We're just trying to hunker down and protect what we got. We had about 35 people here in the room, and almost collectively, people said, we are if not in life support, on the borderline to life support. All right? We are a preference driven. We like what we like. We like our time slot. We like our sanctuary. We like the way we like our bulletins. We like what we like. That's why we're here, because you meet our need. And my point is that's not what Wally does. Wally has something you need, but don't know yet. And so the question then that came to say, hey, okay, you acknowledge that this building is on sort of life support. We've got to do something, right? Before we flatline, right? If you go into the hospital and you have a loved one, now, and I'm assuming a lot of you have been here for years. I don't want to pick on Dan. Is there anybody that's been here longer than you have? At Temple, I mean, I don't mean.
I think, as far as here goes, I was here when the church was built.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody here. There's some people here who probably
Ella, wow.
So what?
Ella.
Ellen.
Yeah.
You grew up in town. Yeah. We won't go into timeline.
The old church.
But the point is that, these are people that I'm assuming love what you do, love who you are, love the history, the tradition, but love the people that they've experienced that, right? So my point is imagine going to a hospital and they said your loved one, your mom, your dad, your brother, sister, your spouse, they're on life support. Does that bother you? It does to you. The question is how much? Right? A lot of times if somebody goes into life support, they're like going, doctor, do whatever you can. Right? Sometimes however radical, because the end is near. Right? What do we do? And so we began this whole initiative is to offer you a lifeline. To throw you a lifeline. And say, are you ready for this kind of change? Or, and I hate to say it this way, or should we just call in hospice? What do you want to do? So we began this process and we said, okay, now let's go back to basics. Why are you here? Why are you here? Well, basically, essentially, it's about walking with Jesus. What is Jesus calling you to do beyond Sunday morning? Not just showing up, right? To ask, how do we change the course? How do we become more than we imagine? So we began with basics. We began where? Who is God? Right? What? And so this is where I do want to you need to kind of feed back to me a little bit. We put out different things like we put out workbooks on each of the topics, study guides, tried to do quizzes, some of you, and I apologize, some of you put out quizzes that I haven't graded yet, but I'm working on it. To find out are you ready to go deeper? That's what I'm actually asking through all of this. Are you ready to go deeper, or are you happy where we are? All right. So we began with who is God? What did you learn? What do you remember that you would share with a loved one? This is where I want to say, and now I can outweigh you. But you should know that. Now I understand. I also understand room dynamics. Sometimes people are like, I feel I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. If I got you one-on-one, I'm sure that you would have some answer. How do you know God exists, and how could you share that with a loved one?
There are evidences.
Yeah.
The complexity of creation is an evidence that a greater mind was at work.
A greater mind, complexity, right? Psalm 8. When I look at the stars, the moon and the stars which you have established, who am I? When I look at the complexity, the order of things. We use the image of the watchmaker, right? The divine watchmaker. Then we ask the big question, the big Jesus question, right? Is it really true that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life? Well, that's okay with you, right? I mean, I understand with you, but aren't they, I mean, they're essentially all the same, right? Aren't they?
Buddha didn't get up.
Well, he got up from his bed.
I mean, one Sunday morning,
Yeah.
Jesus got up.
Yeah. Right, and we talked about, like, anybody that can say, hey, in another couple of weeks, I'm going to be killed, like dead, like, you know, stone cold dead. And then I'm going to come back to life. Anybody that can predict it and then do it, they've got my attention.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. Right, I go back to C.S. Lewis. We've got to throw that in here this morning.
You mentioned the watch.
Yeah.
If you find a watch laying on the road, you pick it up. You don't even at all exercise the idea that it just happened.
That's the point.
It's so complex.
So you're saying that
You have to acknowledge that there was somebody that made it.
right. But and I don't know if you heard what he said. He said if you go out here on the road and you just find a pocket watch laying there, right? You instinctively know that it fell out of somebody's pocket. It didn't just arrive. The wind and the sand and the leaves didn't just self-assemble. The problem is that we look at something as complex as you, with thoughts, ideas, creativity. There's a wonderful documentary on Da Vinci that's coming out. Right? The minds that can create rockets, airplanes, surgery, and you're going, oh no, that's just randomness. Chemicals just naturally self-assemble. It's meaningless. So we talked about that. We also talked about you should be able to explain to people who Jesus is, why you do this thing, this Jesus thing. Right? C.S. Lewis said, look, if Jesus did not rise from the dead, then it's all meaningless. Right? Don't even waste your time. If it didn't happen, don't waste your time with it if it's false. He said if it's true, it is the most important thing in all of life. The only thing it can't be is moderately important. Part-time. And that's almost exactly what we do most of the time. It's part-time. So we talked about who is God, who is Jesus. We talked about the church, this institution, this organization, this community that says, hey, we're part of this story. How do we learn to go deeper? And so essentially, we're people, I think in terms of images. We're people that say, I see something out there. There's something out there. It's speaking to us. It's calling to us. It's reminding us that there's more to life than where you are now. Hey, that's catchy. It reminds us that maybe, just maybe, you were made for more than where you are now. And what we want to do is say, how about we get together and share our stories? Remember the big story that other people have learned over the decades and centuries. Learn what God has been telling us about this bigger story. If you will, and I hope you don't mind me going back. having somebody like Wally tell you there's a whole different world out there you've never seen. And this is what life looks like. Now, Wally has a green little plant, right? We have this image of Jesus saying this is what humanity looks like. So then we also talked about, in different orders, we talked about we see the world a little differently. We're Wesleyan, which sounds complicated, but it basically means we're driven by grace. God is initiating, God is stirring everything. But again, C.S. Lewis had a quote about, every decision either leads you farther, he called it judicial choices. Every decision that you make, right, either takes you a step closer to the divine or farther away. You are never neutral. You are never just going along with the flow. The flow is either moving you closer to God or farther away from God. Right? So the point is God is inviting you through church, through this study, through Sunday school, through the sacraments. We talked about the sacraments. As Wesleyan, we talked about God drawing you through baptism. But how you respond to that grace will either draw you closer or farther away. Right? Yes?
You haven't asked a question at the moment, but it occurs to me that the church as an organization, it's all of us together. We're the people of the church. We live corporately to respond to the grace, the love that came to us through Jesus' sacrifice. And this morning, there's a couple of things going on related to the community that we can participate in, and we pray that it not only brings us closer to the Lord, but the people to whom we reach out. The Franks thing is going on right after worship, and all of us have opportunity to reach out to a kid at Stratton. We won't know the kid won't know us, but they're going to know that somebody loves them, and the people at the staff over there will be telling where this gift at Christmas time is coming from. It's coming from people who love the Lord and love you. So I think that is, we're living into what it means to be the church, as well as simply sharing about God and Jesus. One of the things that I read somewhere one time is if you are sharing with a person who says, well, I don't believe God exists, or I don't believe that Jesus stuff, it's difficult to lovingly say that just because you choose not to believe doesn't mean it isn't real. And it is the absolute truth. God and the Jesus stuff. It's absolutely true. Even if you, this person to whom you're speaking, as lovingly as you can in that type of conversation, is arguing that it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think, what Mary's talking about is what we call Christian apologetics. Like, how do you understand the culture and respond to it? These are things that are great conversations to have. Again, for those of you that are curious enough to go deeper, what she's inviting you to do. Because there are a lot of people that say, I don't believe. And I go, I get that, but you can't live that way. You can't live that. You don't. Because for example, now I'm off on a tangent. You'll fight for something like, think about the big things. If you'll fight for human rights. Why? Humans don't have rights. we're just an assemblage of chemicals. We have no purpose. Yes.
I had a conversation with my art class one time. You know, being in art class, you can get into discussions while they're working on projects. And I had a student who claimed to be an atheist, and somehow we got into the discussion of, is there a God? And, you know, he proceeded to go on and on about why he didn't think there was a God. And I said, it just came to me. I guess God gave me words to say. I didn't know what to say. I remember I said, well, all I can say is he's real to me. He's been real in my life. And I gave some examples. And nobody can argue with what is real to you. You know, there's no argument. They can't come back and say, oh no, it's not real to you, you know. And when you say it's real to you, then they start to listen. It plants a seed.
Well, I think, you know, in answering with Becky's, with building on what you're saying, and Mary, a simple answer, and what I tell people is that don't believe, is that, you know, prayer, you know, having them understand that when you pray, it's all about developing a relationship with God. Not praying for things to happen. That's just not going to happen. It's like asking Santa Claus, I want this toy, and you know, it's just not going to happen. And more importantly is your faith, and letting people, telling people about your own past, about things that have happened, and having them try to understand that through faith, if you stay strong, okay, things will happen. It's just like I got a sign in my office that I read every day where God has a purpose for your pain, a reason for your struggle, but through your faithfulness, trust in Him, you shall be rewarded. And people expect God just to snap a finger and their prayers will be answered, but that's not the case. And Jesus, you know, is a perfect example. You know, He went along, performed miracles at, you know, at His own time. And if you can at least get people to kind of think about that it's not going to be a lightning bolt experience, but just trust in it and look at your own life. You know, you might not believe, but think about things that might have gone your way that you didn't even pay attention to.
I think that's the key right there, is we're called to be ambassadors of Christ. And He gives us experiences in our lives that cause us to grow closer to Him, but there are also things that He can use so people will grow closer to us, and through us they can grow closer to Him. And if we don't share, that's our whole purpose in being here. That's why God put us here. And if we don't share our hearts with other people, we're doing a disservice to God. And I think about the ways that He's blessed me in my life, and I would hate to think that I'm hurting Him and I'm keeping Him from something He wants me to do.
You know, we said something about that watch that you found on the street or whatever. My dad used to quote, and I don't know who said it originally, but my dad used to quote a statement. He said, there's enough miracle in the smallest joint of my hand to stagger a nation of atheists.
Absolutely. What did that say? There's enough miracle in your little finger to stagger the atheists' party. Yeah, I mean, these are all great. Okay, these are all great things to explore, right? I mean, there's a lot more in all of these that are worthy, but unfortunately, Kurt brought up a real bugaboo for all churches. If you can get them to think, if you can get them to be curious, right? I mean, the church's role is to help you be curious, to become the body of Christ. It isn't a resting place. It was never meant to be, right? Somebody once said, it's never meant to be a museum of what was. It's meant to be a launching point for what will be. And the question is whether we're stuck in the movie WALL-E of preference and privilege, or whether we're willing to, and I'll be honest, I don't know. I really don't. Whether we're willing to pick up the mantle of we have a purpose to fulfill. Now, upstairs today, at the beginning of all of this, I went to pick one up. If you've already received one, don't pick another one up because I only printed so many of these, right? This is about, it's the booklet that talks about your vows. So the point of the vow, so anyway, we went through a whole bunch of we talked about the nature of God, right? And I want to kind of go back here. Look at this image of the tree. The part that you see, the vitality and the energy and the enthusiasm and the fruit of the tree comes from the, you know this, the part that is unseen, the values of what you cannot see. So what is in the roots? Just out of curiosity, what do you, now again, we're not we're talking about the church, we're talking about faith. What is in the roots? What are the values?
Are you talking about what we believe?
No, I'm talking about behaviors. See, the point is there, and I'm going to use this morning. Have you ever heard the old statement, actions speak louder than words? What speaks louder than actions?
There's more underneath. This is like the basis for faith, like they say, like if you look at an iceberg,
Right.
okay, and you see this huge iceberg in the water, but in reality, it's probably 4 times bigger underneath the water, which you can't see. So if you're going to be proactive in your faith, there are a lot of things you can do that people won't necessarily see, but that's not the point that, the Bible taught us. We go out and do nice things, whether you buy somebody coffee, say, you go to the teller, that coffee's on me, or you help somebody, with the project, and you don't want credit for it because it's what God taught us. So I think there's so much more we can do that's underneath that we're not doing.
Correct.
Well, your nourishment is in the roots.
Right. What is nourished? Now, and look at this is a wonderful metaphor that we're going to be looking at over hopefully the next week or so, right? When you look at this as an image of the church, the community, the part that is up above, you see this big, and I'm just going to make this up, it's an oak tree, a beautiful oak tree, full of acorns, the whole shebang, right? Just a beautiful apple tree, whatever it is you want to be, right? Beautiful church. What, in the terms of the church, what shows you a church that is alive and vibrant and full of life? What are those things that you look for in a church? We're going to go visit a church and you say, man, this church is alive and it's vibrant. Why? What do you see? What in a church that is alive and vibrant, what are the leaves and the branches? What is that for you? I mean, this isn't a trick. This is conversions, fruit of the Spirit, energy, vibrancy, baptisms, generosity. I said before, and I didn't get to finish, actions speak louder than words. What speaks louder than actions? Consistency. What you do consistently. Right? If you say, Dan said prayer. Yeah, I pray before I eat. That's not exactly, that's kind of, right? What are those things that you do consistency? Up here is a vibrancy and energy, an enthusiasm, a warmth. That all of that fruit that comes from growth and dynamic is funneled, there we go, is funneled through the trunk, through the organization, through the church, through the structure of the church. But that's not where the life is. It's only a conduit. What is down here? Devotion. One of the things that I'm going to mention upstairs, and I'm telling you, you probably don't even have to come to church tonight. I'm telling you everything that you're at. If you were to say there's one word, I'm going to ask you this, I'm going to ask the congregation, there's one word that will define a church. What would you say that one word is? Love. What else?
Discipleship.
Discipleship.
Action.
Action. Devotion. Prayer. Nobody said faith. Interesting. Faith doesn't matter, right? That's not the word I was looking for, by the way. Because in James, chapter 2, James says, right, faith without action is dead. Just as a body without spirit is on life support, James didn't use that language. So, faith without action is dead. To me, the number one word that will define a church and define a faith is integrity. Will you do what you say you'll do? And I tend to collect quotes. If you will do what you say you'll do, nothing else matters. If you won't do what you say you'll do, nothing else matters. So, what I wanted to do, and I'll be honest, it has, the whole relaunch thing, it hasn't really worked. So, I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here. So I put out a booklet, said these are your values. I'm assuming, by the way, I don't know this to be true. I'm assuming that most of you are members of a church, right? And I'm only saying that because at some point you stood up in front of a community and said, I feel like a Boy Scout. You can count on me. I promise before God and you, and by the way, the only other time I've ever done that when I got married, right? And I never went back to Lynette because she won't tolerate it and said, I'm just not feeling it today. Right? As a matter of fact, and I hope she's not watching. By the way, she's not coming today because Wyatt's not feeling well. Anyway, you don't need to know that. But anyway, to say, as a matter of fact, I'm going to check out a couple of other women to see if they're more entertaining than you are. Yeah, exactly. They're going, yeah, she'll shoot you. We do that all the time. Right? We stand before God and say, look, I promise with my prayers, my presence, my gifts, my service, my witness, I will tell my story. You can count on me. So we put this together so that you could understand what it is that you made a promise to. And we wanted to come back and do what I've been calling adult confirmation, because all of us come from different backgrounds. Lutherans, we have a Baptist somewhere. We always throw them in. Some people with Catholic backgrounds, a whole bit, right? So I wanted to do that. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, I really spend a lot of time with them. This idea of our goal is, if you look at a piece of paper, you can say, oh, what's a piece of paper? It's for writing, it's for coloring, it's one-dimensional. until somebody decides to fold it into an airplane and going, where did this idea of flight? I looked at a piece of paper and it was just, it is what it is. I never even considered alternatives of three-dimensional thinking. And that's what we do in the church. Most people kind of go, look, I'm here to make money, hopefully retire into the good life. I'm just going through the motions. I'm trying to fulfill my schedule until somebody says, there's a whole different world out there that is waiting for you, that is waiting for you to understand that God has more in store for you. Yeah.
Just thinking about that image, since you like images, think of the image where we're at now, where you look at underneath the surface and take half those roots away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's where we're at.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to get. It's like the old saying, 20% of the people doing 80% of the work kind of deal.
Well, I mean, many of you, right? Most of you biblical scholars, right? Do you remember Jesus cursing the fig tree? And when they come back, he said, you're not bearing any fruit. And he curses the fig tree. And it tells us very specifically in the Gospels, it died from the roots. And the disciples came back and said, Lord, look at it. The roots are dead. They've always been dead. So the question is what do we need? And there's another passage in Scripture from Jeremiah saying that if you're faithful, you will be, if you remain true to that calling, he said, you will be like a tree that is planted near a river. Its roots grow out so that no matter what's happening up here, no matter what's happening in the culture, no offense, with our government, with our community, no matter what's happening up here, you're unflappable. Why? Because your roots are going deep. But if the roots are shallow and thin, it cannot support what's up above. A tree with deep roots has no fear of the wind. They're unflappable. And people look and go, why are you not as anxious? Why are you not as distraught as I am? Because I have deep roots. And so the question is what are those roots? Right? What are we rooted as a church? What are you rooted in? What do you hunger? The psalmist says, as a deer pants for the water, so Lord, I'm panting after you. I desire that more than life itself. I prioritize it. I'm consistent in it. I believe in it. If we can't recapture that, then our roots will dry up and you will begin to see it up above. Right? The only downside of all of this, right, is this all sounds good. It really does. But I can't make that choice for you. This is something you've already chosen. You are already choosing, right? So what I wanted to do is for the last couple of weeks, I've invited other speakers in. Some that you've liked, and some that you haven't. But all of them have a story to tell. It's kind of like going, a couple of weeks ago. Fortunately, Joyce put together that potluck, right? Try different things. Develop your palate, right? My grandfather, and he was great, right? My grandfather was great. But man, he loved meat and potatoes, right? I swear, every Sunday when we went over to their house, it was some sort of a roast, pot roast, and mashed potatoes. That was it, right? One-dimensional. The problem is you can become so one-dimensional. This is what I like. You forget to develop your ability to hear anything else. The other temptation for that is Each of these speakers has something that you need. But if you look and say, but that's not what I want, you switch dynamics, right? You're now saying, this is what I want. We're not here to satisfy your palate. We're here to inform and grow and learn together. So each one of them has something that is so critical for our future, for the survival of this community.
You're actually saying we're in a ditch.
Yeah.
Now, a ditch is only a grave with the ends kicked out. And so
Yeah.
if you've ever been in a ditch, you just keep in that same ring, going back and forth, spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, if you got chains, you put them on. So you're saying it's time to put snow
Yes.
tires on, or chains, or a four-wheel drive to get out of the ditch.
A great analogy, that we're stuck in a ditch that looks, but after a while, that ditch becomes, this is the way it's supposed to be.
We can't go nowhere.
We've done it this way, and this is part of the struggle, not just this church, every church. We've done it this way for 15, 20 years. As a matter of fact, this ditch worked for us, made us successful 20 years ago. I'm sticking in this ditch. I like my ditch. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. You just can't survive there. You just can't survive. There's a wonderful analogy of an experiment that was done with mice in a maze. It actually began a book on Who Moved My Cheese, right? You know the whole story. The idea is that they trained mice that if in this one corner of the maze there was cheese. After a while, they always knew, the mice began to realize that whenever they were put in the maze, if they went over to that corner, there would always be cheese. That was their happy place. And then something happened in their culture, in their world. And they took the cheese away and they put it somewhere else. But the mice were so sure that their cheese and their success and their life would be in that corner, they wouldn't even look to go anywhere else. They would go to that corner and wait for the cheese to be delivered. And it never came. So the point is that we do fall into that trap as well, right? Man, we were successful in the past doing it this way. If we just do it that way, again, I'm sure we will get the same results. That, I don't know if you've noticed, with technology, things have changed. In post-COVID, life is different. You are now, when I grew up as a kid, and many of you, when we grew up as children, church was the thing to do. It was a socially accepted, rational thing to do. Now, fast forward to 2024, and it isn't. Right? And that's what I was saying about soccer. Now the thing is to be over in the soccer field. And so the question is what do we do? How do we live in a post-Christian culture where Christianity is not the norm? We can stay in our rut. The first thing that I'm trying to get you to do is recognize you're in a rut. Right? You're in a rut. Okay, that's first. The first thing that you have got to overcome, which is the hardest thing, is denial. Right? Denial. And the struggle that we have is oftentimes when we go upstairs, right? The lights are on, the heat or air conditioning is on, the bulletins are printed, and life looks normal. Why should we change that? Right? Because you're in a rut. And the world is moving on. And we've got to figure that out. Right. Now, we've also been hit with another bombshell, and this is when you talk about the tree. When you talk about the tree, there are things that the roots should be seeking, but there are also things that are attacking you. Right? There are also mites, moles, things like that. And we're being hit with different things in our culture. Right? Certainly, the turmoil that we're facing in the United Methodist Church, right, is creating a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, and a lot of doubts. We've got to figure out how to combat and strengthen who we are by searching out what we're trying to accomplish. I always like this quote: without a map, every road looks promising, but with a map, the right road becomes obvious. What is our map? Where do we want to go? Where do you want to go? Right? You know, this is something, and what I'm trying to do is say, this is for me, and this, you know, when you get together a group of people from the congregation, and the congregation says, hey, we're on life support, and that doesn't ring bells, that you're not, I had anticipated that when we were going to start this place would be packed. Right? Hey everybody, come and learn about the basics of your faith. Who you are and why. Right? And let's move forward. Let's pull it out of the ditch. Let's get the cart out of the ditch. The question is are we comfortable? We're more comfortable in the ditch than with the change that's going to be required to pull it out of the ditch. Because it won't be easy. That's where we're at right now. That's the challenge. So what I would like you to do is encourage your friends in your Sunday school class. This is the last time. We're not going to meet again. You can go back to your Sunday school classes and do whatever you wanted to do. But the idea was is get them to take a look and say, these are the vows that you made. Right? The church will not survive without integrity, living into those vows. And by the way, in today's scripture, right, Jesus, you know, everybody always thinks Jesus is like, man, you know, he's got these flowing robes, right? He's just a really cool guy. I mean, he meets everybody's needs, right? Isn't he wonderful? Jesus loves me, right? This I know. What the Bible tells me, and he does. Right? Do you love your kids? Yeah. Do you ever discipline them? Right? This Sunday morning, Jesus is about to bring the hammer down on you. He's about to discipline you seriously. He's going to tell you, now understand this and search your heart, please. Many people will say, Lord, Lord. And I will say, I never knew you. Is the sanctuary going to be filled with people singing songs of Lord, Lord? Is that, I never knew you. What's on my heart is how do I change the course of that? How do I shape complacency out of us into consistency? To say, look, you're on life support. If you want to go to the sweet by and by, that's fine. Just let me know. But if you want to pull it out of the ditch, I'd be happy to have you help us. So the question that I wanted to leave with you, after all of that, is where do you see us as a community, right? We know Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We talk about it, we study it, we're curious, we want a relationship. We also understand that Jesus is calling us to go to Macedonia. But he's asking you a fundamental question, I think, always. Do you love me? Now, understand, you will respond. Right? Actions speak louder than words. Right? And consistency speaks louder than actions. So what you do consistently on a regular basis says more about your faith in Jesus than your membership vows, right? Same thing. When Lynette and I, before the church and the whole bit, right? And then from that point on, guess what? For the last 39, right? We have consistently been together. Consistently been together. Now, that means we've learned, we've had our good times and our bad times. We've learned each other, right? We've melded together, but we did it consistently. We didn't take 5 years off. We didn't take the weekend off. We made a decision that this is the path that we're going to walk. This is the challenge that is before you, right? This is the challenge of whether the church, as it is whether it is ready to relaunch and to do things differently. Right? Now, this is not just saying, yeah, count me in. Well, this is a much bigger, right? This is the roots that we're talking about, not pruning the tree. So, I hope that you've gotten, anyway, I hope that you've gotten something out of these studies. I really do. About knowing where your faith resides, knowing who you are, what the church is, what it's called to do. I hope that I've been able to leave you with something that says, yeah, I feel like we're more united. But also I hope that I've been able to prod or gig or use a little bit of a cattle prod to say, I feel life is coming back, right? I love that image of Wally with that he's got a little boot, and in the boot there's this little plant he said, it's just the beginning. But with that beginning, do you ever wonder what God can do? What He's ready to do? Friends, I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you get something out of this. I hope that you've read it, because we put a lot of time and effort into it. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, I hope that you'll ask me. I hope that you'll join a Sunday school class where they'll be able to dig into these topics at a much, much deeper level, much more consistently, much more get really wrestle with these with other people of who they are and what they do. All right?
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
1 John, in the beginning was the Word, Logos. God's speaking to us. And they sent Jesus as His communicator. And it says He was manifest. Theatrical term, put on stage. And so that's where we are. We are now the Logos. And we have been put on stage to continue carrying out a mission among the lepers of the world, being the Good Samaritan of the world. I think that's what
That's what we're called to do. Go out and share that good news. All right. Hey, folks, I'll see you upstairs in a little bit.
Thank you.